25 to the top of the hour. Smart Means Business, Andrew Barigi and Masi Katsime here, of course, addressing the COP28 aspect. And now, as we winding this up, we shall definitely take a look at the highlights of the COP28, what happened in there. But of course, maybe briefly, let's center on the resolutions of the COP28 and the aspects which are into them, and they have a conflicting some sort of a bit, which I don't know, the responsible stakeholders have to put into place before it can excavate any political tensions within different countries, which political tensions are very significant when it comes to crumbling the economies of those nations. Now, of course, if we take a look at the pace of transition, most especially if we have to take a look at the resolution of renewable energy, using the renewable energy, accelerating the transition to renewable energy and phase out the fossil fuels, as one of the resolutions. And we see the issue here of the pace of transition and the role of fossil fuels in developing countries. You know, the rate at which we are transitioning in them and the role of fossil fuels to developing countries. Now, developed nations advocate for an immediate and comprehensive phase out of fossil fuels, while developing nations emphasize the need for a gradual transition to ensure energy security and economic growth. Now, energy security, I don't know whether this has also been addressed away from the political security aspect, but energy security, most especially to the developing nations. And we see here that the European Union pledged to reach at net zero emissions by 2050 and has set ambitious targets for renewable energy deployment. That is the European Union. The United Kingdom committed to phasing out coal-fired power plants by next year, 2024. And has set a net zero emissions target that is for 2050. However, for developing nations, for other nations, I don't know, India is a little bit there. India's primary focus is actually on expanding energy access to its growing population, and it relies heavily on coal for power generation. Now, coal here, we're talking about the costs of production also being reduced for such nations. And China is one of the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, China, and but it has also made significant investments in renewable energy. Of course, we cannot put that aside, but it's the largest greenhouse gas emitter that way. And of course, we've seen the aspect of the climate change funding, where some of the pledged funds weren't really put out there. They ended on promises. Now, getting back still another resolution of compensation for climate change damages. Yes, yeah, I see something in here where we have an issue of quantifying the loss. If you quantify my loss, is the money I'm getting worth it?
Worth it, yeah.
You know, now there is something here, the scope of definition of loss and damage. How do you define my loss and damage? Because developing nations urge that loss and damage encompasses a wide range of harm caused by climate change, including irreversible impacts and non-economic losses, while developed nations have narrower definition that actually focuses on quantifiable economic losses, you know, as we can take a look at that. So part of this needs to be put really together, because we are, the developing nations really face the repercussions of that. Now, maybe a little bit here, we'll take a look at the role of technology and industrial agriculture. As, of course, in the debate here, there is advocacy for sustainable agriculture, emphasizing the need for agroecological approaches, while proponents of the industrial agriculture urge that technological advancements are necessary to feed a growing population and all that. But anyway, let's wait and see. Next year, of course, we shall be taking a look at how effective these resolutions are in life.
Well, of course, talking about loss and damage, and of course, comparing it to the adaptation. So the question goes, if at all, I think the debate goes about if at all that focus, should they focus on compensating developing countries on the loss and damages for the climate change, or prioritize investing? Investments in helping in adaptation measures that can help build resilience to climate impacts. So the debate is between two. Should I focus on financing the developing countries or invest for future impacts?
I think future impacts is the bigger picture.
But do you think people are going to really agree upon this? Because people have already had damages.
Of course, it's step by step.
Yeah, it's a step by step.
Of course, the damages have to be sorted out rightly, and probably in the COP29, it could be addressed.
Because this is a 2023, they're scaling up to 2023. So definitely, there is high expectation, by the way. There is high expectation, people are anticipating. That is why someone said actually here, he said that we cannot rest until the fund is adequately financed and this fund is, and also starts to alleviate the burden of vulnerable communities. People are anticipating, people are waiting. People are waiting for funds. I think by when the moment there was a resolution, of course, we're going to create a loss and damage committee. People were ready. They were ready for funds. Kenya is facing floods. They expected some money. Morocco, they expected some money. So you see, there's a lot of expectations in these developing countries. Of course, the moment you tell a developing country that you're going to be helping, trust me, they are ready.
They are ready.
In case of anything, they are ready because they are assured you're going to come. There is that, because we are starting, because it's starting. It's an initiative that was started last year. And of course, we can't expect in the beginning years for the progress to be that much. You see, the budget is 100 billion. So far, we have 450 million US dollars. So the progress is
not even 10%.
The 10%. It's not
10%.
Even 10%. So there is clearly. So we should actually implore developing countries to understand that this is a developing concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for now, let's have a Climate Change Executive Secretary. That is Simon Steele. What does he have to say?
Today, we find ourselves in a rather different position in humanity's climate action journey. We are taking baby steps, stepping far too slowly from an unstable world that lacks resilience to working out the best responses to the complex impacts that we are facing. We must teach climate action to run, because this has been the hottest year ever in humanity. So many terrible records were broken, and we are paying the price with people's lives and livelihoods. We're standing at a precipice, facing the global stocktake, and we've got two options. Either we can note the lack of progress, tweaking our current best practices, and encourage ourselves to do more at some other point in time. Or we decide at what point we'll have made everyone on the planet safe and resilient. We decide to fund this transition properly, including the response to loss and damage. And we decide to commit to a new energy system. If we do not signal the terminal decline of the fossil fuel era as we know it, we welcome our own terminal decline. And we choose to pay with people's lives. If this transition isn't just, we won't transition at all. And that means justice within and between countries, sharing benefits across society, ensuring that everyone, women, indigenous peoples, and youth, in all their diversity, have equal opportunities to benefit from these transitions. Last year, I said we were going to do things differently. So let me lay out that vision and what's going to happen over the next 2 years. In 2024, countries will submit their first biennial transparency report. This will mean the reality of individual progress can't be concealed. We will also see at COP29 how to finance this massive shift with the new finance goal. And let this be your first official notice that early in 2025, countries must deliver new nationally determined contributions. Please start working on them now. This takes us to COP30, where every single commitment on finance, adaptation, and mitigation has to be in line with a 1.5-degree world. Science tells us we have around 6 years before we exhaust the planet's ability to cope with our emissions, before we blow through 1.5-degree limit.
Well, that is Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Steele, and of course addressing those matters in there. Well, of course, as we wind this up, we still have quite more highlights coming in here, and now we have the representative from Egypt. What does he have to say about this?
As you all know, COP27 convened at a difficult time in the midst of a challenging international context, as the world continued to recover from the impacts of COVID-19, as well as face the compound ramifications of the war in Ukraine. Nevertheless, COP27 turned out as yet another moment where our commitment to a greater cause prevailed, a landmark in our collective progress to ensure inclusive and effective global climate action. Building on previous COPs, COP27 succeeded in delivering a number of much-needed and long-awaited elements to the global climate agenda. Together for Implementation was not just a slogan at COP27, but rather a timely call to move from setting rules, frameworks, and commitments to a clear focus on the tangible implementation of these commitments on the ground. A call which we heeded together by establishing the loss and damage funding arrangements, including the fund, launching the Just Transition Work Program, and agreeing on the Mitigation Work Program. We showcased an unwavering commitment to enhancing global climate action during this critical decade. By voicing a resounding call for the reform of international financial institutions, highlighting renewable energy as a pathway for the future, championing the adaptation agenda through the work of the Marrakesh Partnership, and agreeing on unprecedented outcomes on water, oceans, and forests, we at COP27 ushered in a new age of implementation in our relentless fight against climate change. Colleagues, as we highlight the achievements of COP27, we also need a frank assessment of where we stand in relation to our collective ambitions, to the stark realities of science, and to the echoing voices of impacted communities across the globe. A quick realities check in this regard should be of concern to all of us for a number of reasons. First, because most of what we bring forward as tangible solutions and actionable commitments is based on speculation or well wishes at most. That we will be able to deliver our NDCs conditional and unconditional. That developed countries will deliver the 100 billion goal. That the loss and damage fund established in Sharm el-Sheikh will be replenished in billions of dollars. That international financial institutions will be reformed to deliver all the support required. And that the private sector, altogether with Article 2.1.c of the Paris Agreement, is the silver bullet that will unlock the flows of appropriate finance to developing countries. These are all mere assumptions with no evident proof in reality. Second, rather than increasing climate finance from developed countries, actually, it's decreasing in relation to the growing needs and the increasing cost of finance in developing countries. The Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund are but two examples of this worrying trend of decreased financial flows. Third, the expansion of fossil fuel exploration and production, in particular of coal, in countries that previously committed to substantially phase down, or in some instances, completely phase out coal. Another worrying sign is the increased gap in renewable energy expansion and availability, and the temptation of resorting to unilateral measures, either through incentives or taxes, shifting fair competition and jeopardizing multilateralism and hard-earned gains in developing nations. Colleagues, these are all worrying signs that we need to take seriously, as they not only erode trust in the global climate regime, but also have deep impacts and severe consequences on our ability to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And while the outcomes delivered in Sharm el-Sheikh do take us a step further in the right direction, these worrying signs need to be addressed immediately and effectively if we are to remain on the right side of history and to ensure that our collective efforts are not in vain. As I today perform my very last duty as COP President, and as Egypt hands over the baton of responsibility for global climate actions to the UAE, I am confident that addressing these challenges will be the focus of incoming President Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber and his able team, especially in the context of the global stocktake, as well as the energy and finance pathways of COP28.
Well, that is Shami Sukri. That is Egypt's foreign minister. And of course, he emphasized the need for concrete action and addressing loss and damage. And of course, he urged all the member countries to set up their ambition in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and achieving net zero target. Well, that is it for today's edition of Smart Means Business. Thanks for being a part of it. Till tomorrow. Good morning.